Welcome to a Road Less Traveled podcast. I'm your host, Hillary Heron. Today we have with us Melissa Willard. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited to dive into this. So can you give us a little bit of background about what you do and how you got there?
I'm a marriage family therapist. I graduated in 2011, and then I've been licensed since 2016. I have an extensive background in personality disorders, crisis work. I've worked at psych facilities. I've worked with law enforcement, assessing people for 5150 holds. I recently just started a certification led by Dr. Ramani, who is like an innovator and like an expert in narcissistic personality disorder. I'm getting certified in the treatment of survivors of narcissistic abuse.
Okay.
So it's become narcissism has become like a buzzword now. I'm sure you've seen it like all over TikTok and everything, and gaslighting and all of those words, right? And it's very, very prominent, but it also is very, very traumatic for the person that's dealing with it. So there's not a lot of people and a lot of therapists that are actually like versed in it. So you can go to a therapist who maybe doesn't have this kind of like training or doesn't really like understand it. And it can be very invalidating, especially going into couples therapy too.
And it's thrown around a lot. At least that's what I've observed recently. Like somebody diagnosed somebody 20 years ago as a narcissist. And now it feels like every time I turn around, somebody's like, oh, my husband called me a narcissist. Right. And I'm like, okay, but like, does your husband know what that means? Is he certified? Like, does he have some sort of education or does he just mean that you hurt his feelings and he thinks you're being selfish?
Right.
Are you seeing that a lot in like your practice where somebody comes in and says, oh, I think so-and-so's a narcissist. And you're like, well, maybe they just got their feelings hurt.
Right. Well, I mean, it's very nuanced. So, like, people can say, like, well, I think my husband's a narcissist, or I think my wife's a narcissist. But it's really like, how are you feeling? Like, how does he make you feel like you have a lot of shame about yourself? Were you like up here, and then after a while, like you feel like way down here and have a lot of like self-blame? There's like a lot to it. Where it's like, it's not just like my husband's being an a-hole. My wife's being an a-hole. Because there's women who are narcissists and men. Right? So it's very nuanced. And you will really, really see it in the survivor because they are just so low and really wanting to like fix the relationship when ultimately they can't. Right? Because that person's not going to change.
And have you seen, I have two questions brewing in my head. Have you seen narcissists come in and be like, I know I have a problem and I need to be better? Or like, has that ever happened, even though it's like super duper rare?
The people that I have seen that do come in like that is usually my wife thinks I'm a narcissist and I just want the validation that I'm not. Or my husband, spouse, partner, whomever is saying that I'm having these traits and I don't know what they're talking about. And usually they really only come in for like one session. Okay. Maybe two. Because when you start really diving into it, it makes them very uncomfortable and you can definitely like, see it.
Ah, okay. Okay. How did you come to want to, I mean, you have a few certifications already.
Yeah.
How did you come to want to be in the mental health space? And then how did you specifically come into wanting to deal with the narcissistic personality disorder?
I think growing up, there was definitely some family dynamics that I really wanted to like find out why people were the way that they were. And then, so I went to University of San Diego. I got my
beautiful
my bachelor's in psychology and also in I minored in business administration as well. And so after I graduated, I didn't go the psychology route. I went like management, retail management. And so I was learning all of these, like customers would come in and they had different personalities. The people that worked for me had different personalities. And I learned you couldn't talk to people the same way, right? And I'm like, I need to use my psychology degree. So I went back to school, got my master's. I went to the University of Phoenix. I graduated in 2011. And that's when I really started like seeing and enjoying the personality disorders and getting into that, the severely mentally ill. It's just like fascinating to me. I really should probably have been a psychiatrist.
Right.
Because I love the way the brain works. Right. And so after I graduated, I worked for the Department of Behavioral Health.
Okay.
And they actually sent us to get trained in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is the treatment of borderline personality disorder, which kind of aligns with narcissistic personality disorder.
They're like just a little bit off. I feel like
Right.
just a little further and you're in trouble.
They used to almost say that borderline personality disorder was like the female version of narcissism. Now we know that that's not exactly true, but this was back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
So
As they were defining these things.
yeah, exactly. So I've just always had like a passion for that.
Okay,
So
cool.
just because it's very interesting the way that the mind works. I love that, right?
Yep.
But then if I can help people who were very, very empowered before they met somebody who has this personality disorder and then have been like brought down to like the lowest of the lows, I want to help to empower somebody to get back up to where you were.
What practical steps do you employ when you're doing that? Like a couple of things that come to mind that you would use for somebody who is like, okay, let's take the step to rebuilding you. What's like the first step to that? What does that look like?
It's mostly like self-empowerment. It's not so much talking about like all the abuse that has occurred. Obviously, like that's very important, but it's like getting back to yourself. I've had women come to me and men too, like they don't even know what color they like anymore. They're living through this person so much that their whole identity becomes that person.
That is very interesting.
Right.
And I like one of the things, like I resonate with that. I have long forever, they ask what my favorite color is. I don't have a favorite color. I like all the colors.
Right.
But it's really interesting to like now like think back and like, how did I get there? How did that happen? Like, I'm gonna have to explore that a little bit more.
Yep.
That's really interesting.
What I do usually, it's kind of funny. I'll have people go to Home Goods or like, Home Sense or anywhere and go down the pillow aisle.
Oh my God, that sounds like a panic attack to me.
Well, all the colors, they have them all like organized by color. And I'm like, you can get any pillow that you want that like resonates with you. It could be furry, it could be leather, it could be pink, it could be orange, yellow, anything that just brings some kind of joy to you. I want you to go buy it.
Okay.
And like people are like, are you serious? You want me to go buy something? And I'm like, just trust me. And they come back and they're like, that really like helped me because I really didn't even know what color. I stood there for like 30 minutes and was deciding. And then now I have it on my bed. Now I have it on my couch.
Like I got to make that decision. I was thinking maybe it becomes their like therapy pillow. Like do they keep it in the car?
There's that part
and
too.
They bring it in.
Yeah. There's that too.
Okay.
Especially like a cry pillow, a scream into the pillow, like anything, right?
I have toddlers. I'm very familiar with the scream into the pillow.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's cool.
Yeah.
And so you're doing the narcissistic personality disorder. Is there something after that, or are you gonna pursue your career around that for a while?
It's basically going to be that. So,
okay.
So just basically making sure that I see people who are survivors of narcissism. So I do get referrals for people who are possibly narcissistic, right? And I will work with them, but typically they drop out of therapy.
Yeah, that's not what they want to do.
So yeah, and then as we know, couples therapy it's not indicative of like helping. Typically, if anything, it kind of makes it worse.
Oh, okay.
And so like for the narcissistic person, they'll come in trying to like save the marriage, save the relationship, do anything to regain that control again. It's not so much that they really want to save the marriage.
Yeah.
It's just to regain the control of the person who's starting to see them for who they are.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
And it's sad to know how rampant like that is. Have you seen an uptick in this since, I'm going to just say since COVID?
Yeah. I would say like 100%. It's starting to really like come out now, especially like TikTok, Instagram. And
the awareness around it.
Yeah. And I will say that people are kind of just doing it and they're taking it from the professionals. So I really want people who are like watching the TikTok videos, YouTube videos, Instagram, like make sure it's from a licensed professional that you're getting your information from. And even though like it is like therapeutic, we are not your therapist. So you have to go and find your own therapist to like work with this, because like, you really need someone who understands it.
Like if that resonates with you, then maybe you need to seek professional help if kind of deal.
100%.
I hope I start to see that real. That's a real idea.
Yeah. I know. It's mostly just for like support to realize that you're not crazy, right? It's not you that is the person in the wrong here.
Yeah.
But they kind of like switch it to make it seem like you are.
Well, and so that actually kind of leads into my next question. So we talk a lot about male dominated. So in your field, it seems like there's multiple definitions of male dominated. It seems like more of your survivors are female. So it seems like more of the offenders are male, or at least that's where it's being. At least that's who's going to get help. Oops, my bad. At least those are the survivors who are seeking help.
Right, absolutely.
And then in your schooling and education, were your classes male dominated? And that's a dual question, by volume or by personality?
I would say that it was about like half and half. The University of Phoenix is a pretty small school. So we only had like in our cohort, I think there was like 11 of us.
Okay.
Right. And so there's starting to be more males as therapists as opposed to like, it's pretty much a female dominated, profession, but we are getting more like males in our profession, obviously. I don't really like the way that I said that.
That's okay. I mean, I think that's really interesting because that's your lived experience, right? Like that's what you have experienced.
Right.
And even if somebody disagrees with it, it's still the way you experienced it.
Right. Well, and I think too, working with law enforcement is very male dominant, right? And so for me coming in, and it was called a crisis co-responder or a mental health unit.
Okay.
So 911 would get a call out for a family member that wasn't doing too well, or someone was on the side of the road talking to themselves or something. The officers would go up and secure safety, and then they would dispatch me out.
I see.
And I would go and assess for either a 5150 criteria or just if they needed extra services, something like that to get help for them, right? And so it was for me going out there, the officers are taking over like the whole entire situation, but I'm like, hi,
like,
so you have to exude confidence and just go out there and just, it was a little bit intimidating at first, but after you work with the officers, like it's fine. You're stepping onto their domain, and as long as you kind of like remember that, just to secure safety, obviously, right? But you still have to go out there and do a job.
100%.
Like regardless, it's about the safety of the person, right? And so I'm trying to keep them safe as well, the person I'm going out to assess.
Well, and law enforcement, they're very much used to more crisis situation, right? Like everything that they're going into, typically they're like on heightened alert for. I can imagine
100%.
I can imagine that could be a struggle to kind of break through.
Right. Because then they have to worry about like my safety as well if someone is like combative or something like that. So, yeah.
Have you had any mentors in the field? Like, was there anybody that you have interacted with that has really encouraged you, or somebody that you can call and be like, I am really discouraged with this job right now, and I just need somebody to talk me off this ledge?
I definitely say that there are many colleagues that I do like call and kind of consult with and stuff like that. But I think the real, like the main like mentor were the people that had a negative impact, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, I want to do something to like help, everybody, right? And even like help myself. So the people who negatively impacted myself really helped to form, me transitioning into this, if that makes sense.
You're like, yes, you're telling me that I can't do this. Well, guess what?
I know. And then too, like Dr. Marsha Linehan, who is like the guru of DBT.
Okay.
I've just like her work is like fascinating. And then Dr. Ramani, obviously, like she, that's why I'm like doing this, because if they can do it, I can do it. So,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And they're both women?
Yes.
I mean, that's
Yes,
pretty
they are.
cool.
Yeah, PhDs.
That is really cool. In my personal experience, I have encountered a lot of male doctors, like male like psychiatrists.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's really cool to have women that are taking that on also, because I feel like sometimes, unless they're really tuned in, like my doctor's great, like, and he has a different feel than most people, but sometimes it's hard to take your own persona off, right? And be able to empathize or understand what somebody else is going through.
Exactly. And I will say too, with working with law enforcement, I like to, or I guess I would say I value working with them as well, because there's a real need for law enforcement to come in and kind of like talk about their daily stuff.
Yes.
Right? They see so much stuff that we should never, ever see.
Right.
And so since I have been in situations like that with them, like they are more likely to come and like see me because they can trust me.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to a therapist that's going to talk about like, oh, you know, like something really light.
How does that make you
right?
feel?
They don't understand that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, no, like give it to me black and white. Like I want to know, like how do I fix myself? You know, like how can I help this?
Yes.
You know, so I enjoy doing that as well.
Well,
Just because it's a real need right now.
I think that's super necessary.
Yeah.
And, you know, in my ignorant self thinks that should be like a job requirement for that kind of job. For, like a trauma surgeon. I think that should be something that is readily available for all people. And I have a whole soapbox about normalizing it for children so that we don't end up with the problems that we have today.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you see, do you do any like contract work for the state or the county? No, none of that?
No, not right now, but that's something that I can definitely like get into and want to get into, because I think there's a need like in businesses and stuff like, oh, there's different personalities. Like, are we doing things the right way? You know, like kind of coming in on a consultation kind of setting, I think would be like fantastic.
I think there's a huge need for that. Especially as companies are trying to implement these like DEI strategies. They're well-intentioned but poorly executed. And I talked about that with another girlfriend of mine. I found out through her podcast, through her episode, that there's only 6 Black female car dealers in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And that's of like 16,000. And that is crazy. But she was talking about how companies are trying to implement the DEI strategies and they think that hiring somebody is enough.
Right.
And maybe that's not enough. Maybe you need to be more considerate of what that means to them. Retention strategies, like that stuff I think is fascinating.
Right.
How would you approach that? This is all conjecture. Would you start with the top or would you start with the staff?
I think you kind of have to start at the top because top and it goes down, right? So but you definitely have to see, because there's a lot of big personalities that run corporations, right? As we know. So starting there, and then kind of trickle down to the people, you know, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
The staff? Like
the staff, yes,
like management and then staff,
Yeah, kind of like going down to the staff too, because they're the ones that are actually like doing the work. But if the lead like management isn't really like as helpful or, you know, isn't really like paying attention to them, you know, like they just want to be heard half the time. And so like if I come in, you know, and like talk with them, I think that would be really good too, because then I can take that information, send it up to leadership too, and go from there.
I think there is such a need for that. A lot of times companies bring someone in and they're like, this is your training. This is your sensitivity training.
Yeah, just watch this. And no one watches that, we all know.
Well, nobody, I was like, nobody watches it, and it's not impactful. And I mean, if you look at the companies that are doing it, they're the huge companies that are financially benefiting from it.
Right.
I would encourage anybody who's watching this to think about how they're doing that. Think about your retention strategies. It's the dollar, the great dollar bill. It's not always the king, or like it can be the king, but it needs to be supported in the right ways.
Right. Yeah. And then too, like if the leadership isn't trusted and then they bring this in, like people aren't going to pay attention to it anyways. They're just going to be like, oh, they're just throwing something at us. Right. Where it's like, if you just have a real person like go in and really like hear what people are saying and then take that information,
but then your leadership has to be open.
They have to be open to it. So it's, there's a definite like fine line.
I see so much need here that my little wheels are like trying to take off. I'm trying to like bring them back. For your next steps, are you taking on like individual clients? Are you looking to take on groups of clients, like you were talking about law enforcement or things like that? Which way are you kind of going? What's your
right
next
now?
steps?
I'm doing one-on-one individuals, but the goal is to go and do like group settings as well. I'm going to be starting an Instagram that's basically just about surviving narcissism. We'll just say, right, and eventually like we'll be able to like do group work through that.
Okay.
Right. And then you can look on my Psychology Today profile, and that will send me a direct message if you want to get services with me.
Okay, cool. When you have the Instagram, let me know. I will definitely share it, and I will definitely share the link because I think it's so important. I think it's also important when people come in and say, I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse, to say, you're a survivor of something, but maybe it wasn't that. Like, how do you address that?
What do you mean?
Like if somebody comes in and says, I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse, are you like, what you're talking about isn't narcissistic abuse? Or are you just like, yes, you are?
Well, it would just depend on like what they were telling me. Like we definitely dive in. It's not like automatically I'm like, yes.
Yeah, right.
That person's
you
narcissistic.
said it. You're right.
Oh, for sure. Because I have people that come in and they're like I say, like my wife's narcissistic or my husband's narcissistic. And it's actually that person, right?
Yes.
Right. So there's a lot that we have to kind of like unpack. But typically someone's not going to come in and just be super like confident, like within themselves. Usually they're like, I'm really going through something and I don't feel like myself. I feel sad all the time. I feel exhausted. I feel like I just don't want to get up like out of bed, right? But I'm still going to work. I'm still doing my things. But there's just something here that I think I need to like work on.
Are you getting a lot of doctor referrals over? Because I feel like a lot of people are more prone to go, oh, this is physical. This is, physiological. Yeah, it can't be my mental health. It can't be my mental health.
Right.
So do you get referrals from doctors? Does that happen?
Well, typically, yeah. Most people will refer to my Psychology Today profile, which has like everything on it about exactly like what I do. And then I'll get messages from there. And I have a lot of colleagues that refer to me as well.
Okay, that's cool. And then if something doesn't fit, you have people kind of in your like not official team, but your team that you trust to refer to.
Yep.
That's really cool. That makes a lot of sense to me. What do you wish you would have known starting this journey?
What do I wish I would have known? I wish I would have, I don't know, that's like really hard because I feel like the trajectory that I went in was pretty good the way that I did it. Because when you are getting your master's, they always tell you, you're not going to see these people, so we're not going to really like dive into this stuff.
Interesting.
Right? So you're not going to see somebody who has psychosis in private practice. You're not going to see someone who has schizophrenia. You're not going to see somebody who has like borderline personality disorder. We touch on it.
Why do they think that is like?
That's how it was like back in
you're always
2007.
Institutionalized.
Like, that's how it was. They're like, they just don't walk in. They're always at like a hospital setting or a doctor setting, like you're not going to get it. And that's not true. Right. And so I did, and some of my colleagues too, we kind of went the opposite way, and we worked with the severely mentally ill like right away, right? We worked in psych facilities right away with children right away, as opposed to just going to a private practice setting where you wouldn't be as versed in this, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Anybody getting into getting their master's, doing their internships and stuff, I really, really recommend diving into this, like really looking at personality disorders, really going into psych facilities and getting, like versed in all of this stuff. Because, I mean, it will really, really shape your future.
Well, and that's a totally different approach from it. A few episodes back, we talk about how history is recorded, right? And history is primarily recorded by middle-aged white men. And because that's who could read, that's who could write, that's
right.
They knew what it is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. That is what it is.
Yeah.
But if that's the way that they felt like psychology should function, then of course those aren't things that you dive into. Like, okay, so this is what you're going to do, and you're going to go sit in this room. So I think it's really neat that you took it upon yourself to go and get that deeper education.
Yeah.
You have any crazy stories that you can share without naming any names? You're like, this one time somebody was actually scaling the walls.
Yes, I actually have seen that.
Okay.
Like
it wasn't me, I swear.
My gosh, there's like so many to like choose from, especially like in my lifetime of being outside of like the private practice, right? Because that doesn't typically happen.
Yeah.
Well, it has. Like honestly, like when I worked for the Department of Behavioral Health, I had someone pull out a knife on me. Right?
Yep.
And like,
that's crazy.
There's been, with the officers, like I've been a part of a murder-suicide that happened.
Oh,
like,
how
so
devastating.
there's certain things that have happened, that no one really should see, but was I glad I was there? Yeah. Was I able to like help and support? Of course. And everybody else helped and supported me too. I mean, it's a community.
Yeah. Well, now is my next question.
Yeah.
Then how do you deal with those things? Like, do you practice what you preach? Do you see somebody also?
Yes.
I mean,
you almost have to.
There's those like memes that are like, your therapist should have a therapist.
Yes.
Your coach should have a coach. Like
100%, because you have to have people to lean on and to support you through some of these things, because it is really hard sometimes. Like we hear the most devastating things. We hear very happy things as well. Like going to therapy isn't just because you have negative things going on. Right?
It's just to make your life better.
Yeah.
If you only get to do this one time, this is my soapbox. If you only get to do this life one time,
right,
why not use all the tools at your disposal to try and make it better?
Right.
Get out of your own way.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'll get off my soapbox, but like, and those tools are readily available, right? Like most insurances cover some sort of mental health.
Yep. And then if not, like there's cash pay services, and so it's out there. There's support out there.
And it exists, right? And I will link all of everything that I have for you. I will link, or we will try to at least link in the YouTube. What is a piece of advice that you would leave our listeners with? As I can speak English.
A piece of advice. If you feel like there's something going on, like in yourself that doesn't seem quite right. Like I used to be like this and now I'm not. Like I used to feel this way and now I'm not. Like I know that there's more to my life and I know that I really want a life that's like worth living. Go see a therapist. But make sure you do your research on the therapist. Like go to Psychology Today profiles, actually read them, do a 15-minute consult with your therapist just to see, like, do you like their voice? Like
that's a big deal. It's like dating. It's not always the first one, right? You have to go through it.
Exactly. And just know that if you pick a therapist that maybe you're not quite vibing with, you can go to another therapist. You don't have to sit with that therapist anymore, right? Right. And so a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah. Just like a doctor, you don't have to go back to the same doctor all the time. Like if you're not resonating with that doctor, you can get referred. Sometimes it's hard with insurances. I get it.
but I mean, and most therapists will be like, they'll encourage you, right? Like, I'm sorry if this didn't work for us.
Right.
Oops.
100%.
I'll be a
supposed to.
resource for you.
Yes.
I'll be a
You give
referral.
referrals out. Absolutely.
I think that's a really important piece of advice. And I wholeheartedly back that.
Yes.
And thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having
I know
me.
that I'm going to have more questions for you in the future. So I hope that we can have you back after you've been in practice for a while and seen some things. I'll be very interested to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their stories, wisdom, and breaking down barriers with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your support means the world to me and helps spread the word about the amazing women paving the road less traveled in male-dominated industries. If you have suggestions for a future guest or topic you'd like me to explore, please reach out on social media. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on your favorite social platform for updates and behind the scenes. Keep pushing boundaries, challenging norms, and lifting each other up.